Gabrielle Rae Travis, literary artist and editor-in-chief of the zine Whet, talks about the power of community, camaraderie, and connection, and the role played by vulnerability and uncomfortable conversations. I relate in many ways to what Gabrielle talks about, including the appreciation and joy of helping to foster the work, learning from wonderful artists who share their insights with us. As she says, art is about stirring something in us. And when the connections empower us to acquire the skills and gain the confidence to contribute and put our own voice out there, all the better. Give yourself permission to start your project. Here's my conversation with Gabrielle. And I know I'm speaking to a seasoned podcaster because I listened to your episodes, and you were awesome. You're a great host.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. That's something like my dad's always been really on my case about, in terms of once he saw like the zine that I was going to stick with it. He was like, you have to make a podcast. You have to make a podcast.
I listened to Hazel Street's interview and I ordered her planner. So that planner is coming. So because you did that, right? So that makes a difference.
Oh, I'm so happy. I can't wait to text her as soon as we get done. That's awesome.
I also really enjoyed the episode that you put out about why you started Whet. So that might be where we start now. If I could just ask you to tell that story.
Yeah, definitely. So Whet was kind of born out of desperation. A lot of great art happens that way. And it came on the heels of me living in the Dominican Republic for a year. So it was late 2019. And when I was in the Dominican Republic, I wrote constantly. I always joke that like everything that I was trying to run away from just hopped in my luggage. It came with me. So the way that I contended with that was writing. And I'd literally wake up in the morning, just start writing from the balcony. I'd write everywhere I went. I always had my notebook. And when I got back to the United States, I just stopped writing. The pen just stopped flowing. There hadn't been an opportunity for me ever before in my life. Even I went to an art school for my freshman year of high school. And even then, there had never been a place where I felt that boundless, that like I didn't really have any boundaries. I could write as much as I want. I started writing like a screenplay. Like it didn't matter what form I experimented with. I felt like I was capable and I had permission. And then I got back to the United States and I had to find a job and I had to deal with my health and I had to think about all of these things again and wrestle with them and try to make sure that I didn't like slip away from that entirely, even though I wasn't producing anything myself. So I knew that community and camaraderie will always do it for me. I knew that if I have that like sense of connection to people, I can be inspired by that. And even if I'm not creating myself, I get to bask in it. And that's what art is about. And it stirs something in me. And that's what art's about. So Whet was born out of that. But I had no idea how I was going to do it. I knew that I wanted it to be women. I knew that I wanted to have only women artists on this platform, but I didn't know how I was going to get those artists. So it started out with word of mouth, my own network. I went to Craigslist. This was 2019 even. And I went to Craigslist and I like met people in cafes and it was really cool. The first issue was so far from where we're at now, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I still, don't have some like solid framework that I'm always working with, but it's just been a crazy ride. And now I'm here like 5, almost 6 years later. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to the artists who made this possible because they've given me so much. This has been such a tremendous gift to have something that you can feel this fulfilled by, and it wouldn't be possible without them.
So I have to say, it was so funny in your episode where you talk about the beginnings of whet, and you say, I met people in cafes. I still have all my organs. I
Yeah,
was not abducted. I was not, it
I'm
was,
fine. I'm fine. I made it out alive. With Craigslist, that was just really just really questionable. So I'm glad. I'm glad that it all worked out. I think that it was the way that it needed to be at that time. And like I said, it's not in the same space that it was when that first issue came out. And I realized not too far in that I needed to prioritize the voices of Black and Brown and Indigenous and women of color artists specifically, that it had to be a sacred and safe and exclusive space, and that was who I wanted to prop up and that was who I wanted to showcase. So that's been another really cool thing about this journey, is just getting that same permission back that I had in the DR, in terms of being able to let it be whatever it's going to grow and evolve into. Unfortunately, I mean, I do work on this primarily by myself. I'm the one, designing and doing the layout and stuff. But I get to work with all of this amazing art, of course. But that does mean that a lot of it comes through my vision over time. And I would love to bring others into the fold. And I would love to have more people who are willing to volunteer and work with whet, so that it's not just such a one woman show, so that it can foster even more creativity and community.
well, that was something else that I heard you say. I'm not sure it was in that interview with Hazel. It might have been with an earlier one, but that importance of you collaborate with somebody and somebody threw something together and you're like, oh, I would never have thought of doing that. But that's super cool. I love that. Like, let's bring that in.
It's crazy. One example that when I was putting together this release event for our most recent issue, the ritual issue, I collaborated with these two women, Papatson and Jazzy, and they opened up their like studio space to me, and we had a little event there. And we're setting up one of the installations that we're going to have for a Black hair mural kind of thing. And they just start grabbing this fabric and they're like, just manipulate this fabric, make it look like, and I'm like, I never in life would have just grabbed some material and been like, I have it in me to manipulate this and make it something bigger and make it something more grand and special. And so I love that confidence, and I love getting to work with people who just have a different vision.
I go back to that where you said at the beginning, you just kind of like threw it out there. Like you weren't entirely sure maybe what it is that you were trying to create, and it has evolved since then.
Yeah.
But what would you say, what gave you the encouragement to say, like, I'm not entirely sure what this is going to be, but I'm jumping in and it's okay that I don't have it completely defined. That's okay.
Because it's not on me, because it's the artwork of these other people that make it so miraculous and so special. And so that relieves a huge burden off of my shoulders. I'm like, I don't have to be amazing. These people are going to be amazing enough for me. All I have to do is kind of try to use whatever skills I have to showcase it to the best of my ability and try to bring people together. And if that's what I can do, then I mean, I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. But I think it's been really empowering that I know that their work is going to shine. And so I have this like responsibility, of course, to make it shine as much as I can, but I also know what they're capable of. And so it takes a huge amount of pressure off of me.
Yeah, but you also created that space for people to say, I trust you. I'm going to give you my work. I feel like it's going to be represented in the best way possible. So you did that.
Yeah, it's a major responsibility. That's that process with the artists, in terms of going back and forth, showing them screenshots of their layouts, making sure they're comfortable with their spreads, making sure they feel like this is the vision that I had and it's being articulated the way I wanted it to be. That's really important. And the reality is, I mean, Whet at this time is still a very expensive hobby. It's not like a profitable business venture. I work 9 to 5. I do what I can. The reason that I do this is because I love this. It'd be awesome if it made me money someday. And I do like to think of it as a dream that I can continue to build up. I'm not going to like just leave it stagnant in any sense.
So what keeps you moving forward with wet?
It's something that makes me feel really satisfied throughout the process. I feel good about myself because I feel like, okay, I'm able to do something. I'm strengthening some skills. I didn't know Adobe when I started this. It's not like I'm some fluid Adobe master now, but I definitely know enough to turn out a book. So it empowers me, it gives me confidence, and it allows me to work this muscle that I have. And it's something that I think is really important. I have a voice and I have a responsibility to use my voice because I'm articulate, and that's just how it is. If I have something that I can contribute, then I want to contribute it. And this can be a platform for that. And it allows me to bring others into the fold. Our voices are stronger together. And I think that's what has really taught me is even during a time when I wasn't able to sustain myself creatively, I was able to turn to others and get that. And I'm so much better because of it.
Where do your themes come from? Because I've seen like wet comes out twice a year, right? And then there's a theme, and I think I heard in one of your podcasts that you put it out to the audience to say, vote for your next theme, and I think nature was winning. But in
Yes.
general, how do you come up with your themes?
So in the beginning, the first issue was the choral issue because I wanted a theme that was so loose it could be interpreted however. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I wanted to make sure it was wide open. Since then, it has gotten a little bit more specific in terms of things that I care about and that I think are important. Heritage, resilience, these are themes that I think we need to consider. But the nature issue was my first attempt to just give it up to the audience and have them vote. And they could choose between nature, food, and icons. And these people chose nature and proceeded to bring me like the least amount of submissions I've ever gotten, folks. Like, I'm sorry, but for something that everybody was so poignant, like just so pounced on, it didn't come through all the way. But yes, the nature issue is going to be up in January 2025, and it's pretty exciting even still. I'm loving the way that people kind of interpreted nature. Somebody just sent a really beautiful poem, and I don't always get a lot of poetry, so that was special to me. I was glad to see that.
So you said that you stopped doing your own writing when you came back after being away. And is that still true, or are you writing now?
I do not I do not write the same, I should say. I think that it's metamorphosized. I still have to write that editor's letter no matter what. The majority of the content, like the writing that isn't done by the artists themselves, like articles, interviews, things like that, I do have to churn out myself. So there is still some writing, but the creative writing of like a long page of prose that just I pop up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh my God, this just came to my mind. That hasn't been happening. And I've had to make peace with that. That's okay. That you pivot, you find something else, you find another direction to express yourself because you know it's still there. It's not like it went away. I still love to write. I still love words. I still am always going to have this inclination. And so, however, I can keep it growing and fostering, that's what I have to do. If it takes a different form, so be it.
How you express yourself creatively, it can
Yeah.
change over time.
Yeah. And it might have to in order to survive, as long as you make sure that it survives.
What if I asked you what vulnerability means to you?
I loved that question. I saw it. I thought it was such a good one. Like when I think about it, I feel like there's a strength there, kind of like a strength of surrender and acceptance, because vulnerability kind of means relinquishment. And in order to relinquish something, you have to be okay with that. Like you have to be confident that there's going to be something that can hold you in place, that can keep you grounded. You're not losing anything because of it. You're okay with being powerless. There's no negative connotation with that word. And I think vulnerability is a huge part of what allows us to stand in solidarity and stay connected and united. So it's really, really important for human connection. And we don't get a lot of it and we don't see a lot of it in a lot of places nowadays. So I loved that you brought up that word. And in fact, I wanted to ask, what made you ask that question?
Good question. um, because it's something that I've struggled with in my life, probably. So it's taken me this long to get to the point where I could say it's okay.
Mm,
And I think, like you, maybe it doesn't have to be, but to see it as a strength,
hmm.
as a place of coming to an openness
Yeah.
where I can allow anything in and not not worry about how that's going to affect me because I have to feel kind of like okay.
Mm,
And then I open myself and I let things in and they can change where I'm going. And that's good. Like I can be influenced by things around me and people around me. And also I can feel kind of secure that these things come in and they change me, but I'm still grounded ultimately. And that's for me, I think yeah, all of these conversations are really about exploring that.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think there's vulnerability in dialogue, like period, because we don't like to have uncomfortable conversations and we'd be much better for it. We have to confront these challenging notions between each other and with ourselves so that we can, you know, break down the boundaries, but also build them up so that, like you said, when you accept things in and when they come, you're able to roll with them a little bit. It's a little bit easier. And I think because things can be tough and like because things can be hard in this world and because things aren't necessarily always fair, it's easier sometimes to become or to try to harden and to try to kind of build up the steely exterior, and it never works. I don't think I've ever seen it like really be successful in keeping somebody protected or happy or secure or fulfilled or any of the things that really improve our quality of life. So, yeah, I think even though it is really difficult, there's something to be said for being willing to let it all go a little bit.
Yeah, and I will say, when I listened to some of your interviews, I was curious to speak with you because you were so open. You were so open with the people that you were talking with that I was like, oh, I want to talk to, I'd like to talk to her because she just seems really willing to explore and be open and talk about different things. And you share things about your life. And I encourage everybody to listen to your podcast because I almost canceled because I wasn't feeling well today. But I'm like, no, I have a
Oh,
feeling, Gabrielle.
wow.
I'm like, I need that energy actually
Oh
today.
my
So,
gosh. That's
so
so
cool.
sweet.
No,
Oh,
it's
that
good.
struck me. I love that.
Oh, I appreciate that very much.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I was like, wow, somebody's reaching out to me for a podcast. That's crazy.
Well,
But
we're flipping the switch on you.
exactly, exactly. That's why I'm like, this is interesting. That's kind of how the journey of wet has been, where it's just like, I'm surprised that this is happening, but let's go with it.
So you're exploring this area of creating a space for artists that otherwise would not be seen, probably, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And I cannot underline enough that I encourage everyone to give themselves permission to. And like, I'm a big person who I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it if it's not going to be done right and all this stuff. And it'll really prevent you from moving forward if you don't watch your own back. So I really encourage people to start a project, even if they don't necessarily know where it's going, or if they don't have a clear vision of what exactly they want to execute. Start somewhere. Just start somewhere, because the reward and just how powerful it'll be in your life. It's a lot. I could go off this alone. Like, I'm fine now. You know what I mean? Like, I can get a job as long as I'm able to pay the bills, and I'm comfortable and have the quality of life I want. I have something now that keeps me so, like, emotionally, mentally, spiritually fulfilled, that I'm good. My fuel tank is full.
That's amazing because you created that for yourself.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't think about it like that, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I did.
You
I did.
did.
And a lot of
Um,
other people created it for me too, though.
yeah, no, so the community that you said and creating these
Yeah.
opportunities to share work with other people, I think is hugely valuable, is amazing.
Yeah. It gave me a lot to think about, just because you don't really, like, it usually happens at release events where people will come up and they're like, "Oh, this is awesome that you brought these people together." And until somebody says that, I don't recognize what's going on here. And so it's moments like this when I'm speaking to you where I'm like, wow, like, this is so cool. This is so much cooler than I even probably recognize or acknowledge when my head is, down in the books with it, because you're trying to get something made at all times. It's biannual, but there's always something to do for the most part. And especially now with the podcast hopefully resuming, then it's like, okay, there's definitely always going to be something chugging along, but that's awesome. And so, like I said, it's moments like this where you're kind of not working, where you think, dang, like, wow. Yeah, I did do that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. It's huge because you don't need to. Like all of these things, like you don't actually need to do it, except on some level, you do need to do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
you
amazing.
definitely, or I definitely do, and I'm so glad that I found it, or it found me, or however it happened.
Just curious, and we don't have to go into this, but I'm curious about the fact that you go to Dominican Republic and the words just flow. And then you come back home to the United States and the words kind of stop. And you find another outlet, which is amazing. So there's no judgment, there's nothing. But I'm just curious, like, what do you think is in that around being away that allows you to express yourself in words more easily, maybe?
I think that there was, well, number one, there was a luxury of time that there really wasn't when I was in the US. The job situation was different. Even though I was still working, I was working in a different way. So my daily life kind of allowed for more just writing. But mentally, I really wanted to get a lot out right then. I really wanted to just be unburdened as much as I could. And when I got back to the US, it felt like I didn't have that freedom. It felt like you need to think about getting a job, you need to think about paying your bills. And the more and more I inch towards that, regaining like normalcy of what life here in the US is like, it it just wound me up a little bit. It was harder for me to it felt forced to try to like bang out a poem. It just wasn't as easy for me. So it had to take some other form.
And when I've heard you talk to the people that you've interviewed on your podcast, I think that's something actually really important is that we don't always need to be the ones creating the stuff. But if we're the ones who are taking it in and responding to it and feeding back to, ideally, like feeding back to the people who have created that work, that's a hugely powerful thing, also.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's really powerful, and it enriches us just as much as it enriches them. And we often don't realize that. Like, that's again, that's that feeling when somebody comes up to me at the party and they're like, "This is so amazing. Thank you so much." And I'm like, "You feel the same way I do?" I feel like saying thank you to every person in this room. And I try to as much as I can, but I just can't impress enough that it is so rewarding for me.
I might just ask, was there anything else that you thought of that you wanted to share that I haven't asked you about or hasn't come up?
I want to put the plug out there for people to reach out to me if you're interested in working with whet on the side of things, like the operative side of things, because I really would love to bring more people in. I recently had somebody email me their resume, and I don't know anything about marketing. I don't know anything about a lot of the things that are crucial to the administrative side of whet, and I would love more hands. So if anybody feels like they have any skills or talents or strengths that they're willing to contribute, I am not able to provide commissions at this time or anything, but it's definitely an amazing volunteer experience. I will write you one hell of a reference letter or something if you ever need it. And if there's something we can work out and trade, I'm always down. But I really do want to bring other people into it and build up the brand.
You can learn more about whet and subscribe by visiting whetzine.online. You can also check out at Gabrielle with 3 L's, Rae, and at whetzine on Instagram to learn more.